So we're back with another video for this chapter. We're going to talk about chapter 14, which is in the media ethics at work, which in this chapter it talks about the case of the rape victim, which I thought was a very interesting story, and it really caught my attention as I was reading it, and I'll get into that with y'all. News organizations have to make ethical decisions throughout their reporting career. Like, every news organization has to decide what they're going to report on and if it's right or if it's not right. So that was the main topic of this. But as you get into it, it talks about how this just isn't an average murder. Jonathan McFadden is a reporter for Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He is a crime reporter, and so he just talks about, or he reports on the crimes that happen in that area. So in August of 2012, he broke a story about Tony Brown, who was accused of killing Michael Taylor in the streets after Taylor allegedly raped his half-sister. So he knew that it was against the policy to reveal a victim's name. And so that was a very catching headliner that I was reading at the very top of the story. So he knew that revealing the victim's name would cause a lot of backfire on her. And so revealing the location of the crime and saying the name of the street, along with the relationship between the shooter and the murder victim, which would eventually identify the rape victim in the end, because they would connect the street to her. And so it just was a whole story about how they were trying to figure out how to write the news story without trying to traumatize the 16-year-old. And so he didn't know how he felt about many things. And so he talked to the editor-in-chief along with the sheriff. And so he started to interview neighbors who said that Mr. Taylor was the father of the sexual assaulted girl. So, yes. So he later interviewed the sheriff and saw the report of the record that Taylor was the father of the victim and suspected of sexual assault. So that was a big deal in the case. So after meeting with editors and deciding not to officially not use the victim's name, the journalists were afraid that it would traumatize the 16-year-old, which was very valuable to them, because they didn't want to do that. They thought that was very wrong to try to hurt a 16-year-old whenever something tragic already happened to her. So it also made it easier for them to make that decision because she was a minor. And second thing after that, they decided not to report the name of the street of where the crime happened, because it was a small town and they didn't want people to try to look into the reports and try to figure out who the victim was and like what happened, and then try to go and ask her questions and make her traumatized. So the main idea of the paper was not to mislead the community, but to inform them. And so they were trying to be very transparent, but also also protect the victim, because they didn't want to cause turmoil and hurt her reputation or hurt her future, or people look at her differently, or like any sadness towards her. So as a journalist, you can publish things. You can publish many different things, because you have that right because of First Amendment and laws that have been created for journalism. But that doesn't mean that you should always say those things or always publish what you know, if that makes sense. So that was the main focus of the story, is that you don't always have to use the information that you have. so you can decide what information is best for all parties, and that way it doesn't end up hurting somebody in the long run, or in the end. So at the end of the story, it talks about 3 years later, they are still trying to protect her, even with the rival news outlets that are trying to like maybe publish her name in the end or use her name in something. They try to protect her with the follow-up reports by not using her name at all, and just trying to not put that burden on her. And so that, I felt like, was a really good aspect for you to actually sit down and think about whether or not you want to basically decide if right and wrong, if not even right or wrong, but like information that you want to use, if it's actually going to hurt somebody or if it's not going to hurt somebody. Like, that's what you always have to think about. Like, it's not about yourself. Like, you're actually but publishing something that could affect somebody. So you always have to think about what you say and do. So I found it very interesting, and I really enjoyed this one. So thank you.